When war breaks out in Taiwan, what do? You could take some pointers from the Taiwanese government and also Ukraine. Welcome to China Uncensored, I'm Chris Chappell. Before I begin, let me give you a quick update on how our fight with YouTube censorship is going. Sucka Does Stuff says, I thought y'all hadn't uploaded for a bit on this or your other channel. Then I found that y'all uploaded while I sleep, and I'm not getting any recommendations. Han Fan says, been a long-time subscriber and can't remember the last time China Uncensored was in my recommended or suggested feed. I always have to search for the channel in order to watch the content. Thanks, YouTube. So please join me in Operation Honeypot by leaving a honeypot emoji in the comments. It's for the algorithm and also to show YouTube we know they've got their sticky little fingers in China's honeypot. And sign up for our free weekly newsletter so you'll be notified of all our episodes. That's ChinaUncensored.substack.com. And now on with the show. So there's no question China is preparing to invade Taiwan. That's basically been their New Year's resolution for the past few decades. It's just a matter of when. One answer being as soon as 2027, which, let me remind you, is just around the corner now. Yeah. 2017 was almost a decade ago. We're all fossils, and our remains will soon be studied by archaeologists. Now, an invasion is by no means certain. Hopefully, Taiwan, the US, and the rest of the world are doing enough to deter China from ever going through with an invasion. But hope isn't going to fend off an army, unless we're living in a Disney movie, which I assume we're not, based on all the cursing and boobs. So we have to prepare for the worst. Everyone from average Taiwanese citizens to foreign residents, expats, or tourists needs to be able to answer one key question. What do you do when China attacks? If only the answer were as well known as stop, drop, and roll. The Taiwanese government provided some answers to that question in this new Taiwanese National Public Safety Guide. It's the third edition of the All-Out Defense Handbook that the government started publishing in 2022. Like previous versions, this one covers what to do in case of natural disasters and other emergency situations. But unlike previous versions, the third edition explicitly talks about the threat of aggression from China. And it portrays China as the enemy. It's not subtle about where the threat is coming from. You know you're a terrible neighbor when the folks living near you literally have a handbook for what to do when you inevitably go nuts. Well, more nuts. Another update is the mention of cybersecurity. The handbook warns about made-in-China software, specifically DeepSeek, WeChat, TikTok, and RedNote, as well as Chinese brand devices, and how they could be used by the enemy in a crisis. Another addition to the handbook is that in the event of an invasion, tone down the selfies a bit. Don't take photos or videos of Taiwan's military, which makes sense given people's tendency to post everything to the public nowadays. And with Gen Z's cybersecurity complacency, this is much needed advice. I know the urge to take a selfie or upload crazy content is strong. Man, I wish you could give likes to people for all the things they don't share. But seriously, if you ever find yourself in Taiwan during an invasion, listen to the Taiwanese government and do not record the Taiwanese military. You'd be giving away vital intelligence to the Chinese if you do. Taiwan's handbooks give some other advice, like what to do in the event of China using chemical or nuclear weapons. The fact Taiwan thinks those are on the table really says a lot about how brutal and insane the CCP is. The handbook also gives useful general advice for emergencies. This includes stocking up on at least 1 week's worth of food, medication, and other supplies, carrying radios, instructions for first aid, and instruction for finding the nearest shelter, relief station, hospitals, and ration distribution center. And while it's not in there, it's implied to have essentials ready to go, like the complete Gilmore Girls Blu-ray collection. If that gets left behind, China wins. But all these instructions are pretty basic, to say the least. The Taiwanese government basically is just telling people to protect themselves, wait for further notifications from the national government, and watch out for danger. We're talking about a potential invasion from China. People in Taiwan need to be able to know how to do more than just survive and get out of the way. they need to be able to actively contribute to Taiwan's national defense. Taiwan is aware of this, which is why it established its All-Out Defense Mobilization Agency in 2021 and created the Whole of Society Defense Resilience Committee in 2024 to improve civilian involvement. The Taiwanese government has been working with all sorts of NGOs and companies to make it easier for civilians to get involved in Taiwan's defense, including 7-Elevens, which sounds weird, but 7-Elevens in Taiwan are on a whole other level. If only 7-Elevens in the West were nearly half the quality of those in Taiwan and the rest of Asia. Many NGOs like Kuma Academy and Forward Alliance have taken it upon themselves to help people learn skills like friend and foe identification, first aid, and how to counter information warfare. But the Taiwanese government has generally been avoiding direct support to NGOs, since many fear this would redirect funds away from the military to civilians who are just playing soldier. But we shouldn't underestimate civilians. They can and should fight with all the support they can get. This doesn't necessarily have to mean everybody's aiming guns at China, although personally I think Taiwan would have a much better chance of survival if everybody exercised a Second Amendment right to bear arms against this bear. But ordinary people can fight back against a much larger foe in all sorts of ways. Look no further than Ukraine. Ukrainian civilians have built drones and other military equipment, gathered and disseminated open source intelligence, waged cyber warfare, fundraised, provided humanitarian aid, supported supply chains, shared war crimes, and more. Heck, they could even just set booby traps like they're warding off the wet bandits. Taiwanese civilians can do all of this too, and more. Of course, what works in Ukraine isn't guaranteed to work in Taiwan. For example, drone manufacturing and supply distribution may be tough, especially considering that Taiwan is an island that China could blockade and isolate for weeks or even months. That still shouldn't stop Taiwanese people from standing up to the CCP. But according to Rand, there's something holding them back. There is a deep-seated reluctance among at least some political and military elites in Taiwan to contemplate readying Taiwan society for the possibility of a large-scale conflict. Why? Because many fear that preparing for war with China will anger China and ignite a self-fulfilling doomsday prophecy. These people need some good old-fashioned advice for dealing with a dysfunctional relationship. You can't control what China does. You can only prepare for it. But there is always the chance the CCP won't last long enough to invade Taiwan. People are desperate inside of China. In fact, it's so bad, millions of young Chinese people are getting hooked on nostalgia for the 2000s, and the CCP is not loving the vibe. If you want to see why the CCP is so terrified of this seemingly harmless trend, check out my latest deep dive episode, China's New Drug, Nostalgia. It's available for fans who support China Uncensored on ChinaUncensored.tv. Click below to watch a free preview. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.